Hey, welcome back to Jake Looks at a Website. What the hell heck is Triumph up to these days? I don't know. I mean, they've been around for forever. They're like the Harley Davidson of the British. My mother had a Triumph back in the day, but not a motorcycle. Triumph Spitfire. You know, this was before my time when she was a wild single lady doing single lady things. I don't know. Sorry, Mom. But anyways, we're here to look at their website today just for a bit of fun. Also, these videos a lot of times end up being just almost more of a judgment of the website than anything. 'Cause it's like, you know, you gotta have a good one. So we're gonna check them out. And while you're checking it out, you can check me out here on the Insta360 Link web camera, which is following me around. Pretty cool stuff. Coming at you with a 4K super cool video. Link in the description for this webcam. It's seriously a cool webcam. It does more than I'll ever need. Anyway, Triumph motorcycles. Let's just jump into the actual categories here. Sometimes these setups are real goofy and it requires you crazy navigation. I like this. This is very clean. This is nice. As you can see here, Triumph has sporty bikes and naked sporty bikes, some Avenger bikes, some modern classics, and of course the Rocket 3. What a cool bike. Let's start up here at the very, we'll just start at the top. We'll start at the top, starting with the Trident 660. I think someone had the bright idea up at Triumph. They said, you know, we don't really have a good like entry-level bike. I think the 660 was like the old motor from like the Daytona or something, one of the older ones, something like that. They're like, let's revive it. We stuck it in this thing to be a good budgeted bike here. A thrilling triple engine, really agile. Wow. But should just be a solid little naked fun bike. It looks cool. I think it's a neat looking bike. Sometimes it's like the less is more kind of thing, and I think this is a good example of that. It looks normal. There's nothing radical going on there, and I kind of appreciate that this year. That's enough of that. You got the old 660 motor, inline 3, and that's the big thing you're going to see here with Triumph. A lot of, you know, everyone else out there is like so boring with their normal engines, so they're like, we're going to do parallel twins and inline 3s. That's just going to be it across the board. Nothing else. I think actually, just sidetrack off the Trident real quick, they got to be working on a single because they're going to come out with actual competitive dirt bikes to race in like motocross and supercross. I think they're working with Ricky Carmichael. They want like a legit race bikes to race, and you're not going to do that with one of those existing engines. So they are at least developing a single there. 80 brake horsepower, 47 foot-pounds. So like you compare it to something like the FZ07, MT07, that's like a bit more horsepower, a little bit less torque. But, you know, should all be pretty good there. 180 rear, show of 41 millimeter upside downs, 2 riding modes, road and rain. I mean, honestly, for a bike like that too, that's all you really need. Slipper clutch is pretty cool. 10,000 mile service intervals. Wow. I'll never take a bike that long. I know these bikes, like my CRF, I think it says it's like 8,000. Never. Wet weight, 416 pounds. So compared to something like the MT, it's about 10 pounds heavier. That's all within sort of the range there. And that's kind of what I would see that as a bike that would be real competitive with it. MT07. I was gonna say, you know, it used to be like the SV650. Now they got the new version with their parallel twin. Honda's got that new Hornet with its 700 something cc engine. I feel like these would all be kind of competitors for that. And you see that the price is reasonable. Like if I were to go buy another MT07 today, yeah, I would very much consider the Trident 660. I'd want to go take it for a test ride and see what's up, because I really feel like outside of the Japanese brands, I feel like Triumph is a pretty solid brand to go with. I think these guys have really got their stuff together. What's these? Oh, the Speed Triple. We're gonna go straight from the more starter bike to the Madman version, the 1200 to Duke 1290, or who else makes a crazy hyper naked? I guess there's the Kawasaki H2N or whatever, technically, although I feel like that's kind of, but yes, I don't know. You get a single-sided swing arm with this guy. Y'all gonna get me a copyright strike here. 177 horsepower, 92 foot-pounds. Is that really its wet weight? 436 pounds? This is a dangerous bike. I don't I don't need this. I would want it though. It's got that crazy alien bug look on the front, you know. You guys into that or not? I will say, I know a lot of people love this styling. I might rip it off and put just a single round headlight if it was my bike. Like a misshift in there. It is expensive. All those big ones like that are like, they know what they got. Aluminum single-sided swing arm. Got a 190 rear tire. Olin suspension. I mean, they're just throwing the best components at it, you know. A big TFT display. Like we said before, very reasonable wet weight. It's a good looking bike. So then we got this one here, the Speed Triple 1200 RR. Is this just like a mini fairing version of it. Obviously not a full fairing. Oh, I do like how that looks though. Oh, kind of like that. So I mean, like, they're showing it on the track. I mean, the person buying that's, you know, maybe they'll take it to the track. I don't see that being like someone's track bike though per se. But I mean, do they have a full-on super sport bike though in here? I thought they always like, where's the Daytona, right? Well, anyway, let's look at the new Speed Triple 765. Is this what I rode? Because it says new. Maybe they updated it. Yeah, it's got that bug eye look. I'm not a big fan of that. I also noticed those bug eyes bounced the whole time while I was riding. The engine felt great. I love the engine when I rode the one, at least the one I rode around. I don't know if I said these are different. Yeah, I think one of the things I wasn't a huge fan of though with this bike was that its looks were odd, like at least in the front. I like the rest of it. I mean, that actually looks great right there.
For a limited time only. A unique Moto 2 edition.
They'll make that one limited. That's the coolest looking one. You'd get the impression, right, that, oh, it's going to be a real comfortable bike to ride because of the upright handlebars, the upright riding position. But it really didn't feel that way. It felt like the rear sets were very high, like a sport bike kind of rear sets. And then combined it with the fact the suspension, like we were out there riding, it wasn't rough roads, but it wasn't like the smoothest. And the thing was really beating me up. It felt really rough. I wasn't a fan of it. It just felt like super sport suspension. I found it a little bit uncomfortable. Maybe that just makes me an old man. 118 brake horsepower. That's pretty good. 60 foot-pounds. A wet weight of 417 pounds. You can't complain. It's a great setup. It's a great engine. It's great everything. No Daytonas though. Out of those bikes, I take the Speed Triple 1200 RS, and I try not to die. Let's look at the old Avenger bikes here. So you got 4 different ranges. We're gonna start with the Tiger Sport 660. Same engine that was in the Trident 660. This is probably built on the same frame and everything. It looks similar. Kind of a touring version of this bike. And sure, why not? That's probably gonna be real popular. I always think these are kind of weird looking bikes. Like, they're not ugly. You've exaggerated, like, you know, the taller windscreen, the taller bars, the pulled down seat. You know, it's like everything's kind of stretched in a way. It just makes it look like a bike that got too hot in the front of the window of the car and it melted a little bit. I definitely could see like a good daily commuter with something like this, especially if you had to do some highway riding. This is a fine bike on its own. I think it's a shame there's not a actual real Avenger version, like a Tiger Rally Off-Road Pro version with this setup. They change up the bodywork and throw an actual 21 with some long travel suspension. I mean, the time is now. Let's look at the 900 range. Your GT versions, which you got the normal one, low, which is gonna be lower than the Pro, which is gonna have better equipment on it. And you can think of those as like the Grand Touring. I'm sure that's what it means, like the Grand Touring versions of those bikes. The road going, you can still do some off-roading for sure. A little bit less suspension travel, cast rims, look like they're on 19s. Then you go to the Rally and the Rally Pro, you're on 21s. And so initially you look at this bike and you think, man, it's actually pretty reasonably priced. You see it's $15,000. I mean, it's Triumph, you know, it's a little more of a premium brand. But this, of course, is the one you're really going to want right here. This is the one I rode. And it was a shame I didn't get to actually go off-roading. There was some kind of wreck on the road, and we basically just ended up riding them on the street. Ooh, that's a good color right there on that. It's one of those bikes that's got more bells and whistles than I could even remember. 93 horsepower, it's 64 foot-pounds. That's going to be plenty. That's great. 9.4 inches in the front, or 9.5 inches in the rear. That is a lot of suspension travel. That's actually that's pretty awesome. That's great. I'm not seeing wet weight on here, but the dry weight is 443. We can imagine the wet weight upper 400s, probably not quite 500, but probably getting close to. This is a popular adventure bike, but for me, especially with some of the newest ones coming out, you know, from the Japanese market, $5,000-6,000 cheaper than this. I mean, this may be a great bike, but is it $5,000-6,000 better than a V-Strom 800 or the new Honda Trans Alp, which are going to have a TFT display and all the settings and rider modes and ABS. So, you know, it's something to consider. Big bike like this with that much power, you do want a lot of those computers in there. I think what they need to do at some point is make it so that all these riding modes, instead of being things you got to go into the menus and select, you just got like big preset buttons, kind of like a radios used to have. You just click it and now you're in that setting, and you can change things and hold it for a second, it resets it, you know, like do that and make it so I can click it on the fly and it remembers what setting it's on. Or even if I have to, I turn it back on, it switches back to this dumb setting. It's just a quick tap and we're good to go. Like, I'd be fine with that. Cool bike. Fortunately, the way I'd want one it's like the most expensive way. Let's look at the 1200 range real quick. Basically same thing, just more hardcore. We now have the big 1200 motor. I believe in the models they've done a similar thing where they've got some GT versions, then you go into in this case it starts at Rally Pro, then you got Rally Explorer. Let's look at the Rally Explorer. Let's get crazy. 24,069, holy yeah. And you know, I mean, this looks just like this is one of them big boy adventure bikes, right? You know, you roll up there with the guys on the big 1290 Venture and the BMW, you know, GS Mega, whatever it is. I mean, just look at that. That's a bike. Load it down with gear and see if you can pick it up. It's just for fun. You know, we just do it for fun. I mean, 147 horsepower, 95 foot-pounds. You're gonna get down the road just fine. It's not gonna be a problem. You're gonna be good. Shaft drive, that's actually great. So you can traverse the world and never have to do anything. So you've got 8.6 in the front and rear. It's a big bike to have that much travel. 2118 setup. Proper big 7-inch display. Oh, here we go. What weight? 575 pounds. I'm surprised it's not more, honestly. They got these 10,000 mile oil change services down. That's really cool. Blind spot radar. So how does it work? The car gets close. We shoot out a radiation and we kill them. We kill them for getting too close. Hill hold control. Wait. Hill hold control. Simply activate. Stay still. Simple to activate and to use. This is a key. Apparently we don't get enough time to read it. It's just gonna keep going. You have to be sophisticated, be a fast reader. Don't wanna try it. I hope the hill assist mode though at the end of the day is that like a stick in the back that just like shoots out between the spokes and stops it. $25,000 bike and it's got a stick in the rear. Yeah, I mean it's a top class super duper mega adventure bike. Costs $1 million just as they all do, and it's gonna do everything you need it to do. It's gonna be real heavy. Let's look at the modern classics. In other words, the Bonnevilles. They're all Bonnevilles are based on a Bonneville. It's an icon. It says it right there. And it's capable. Look, you can go. It's beautiful. And it's an icon. Well, what are you waiting for? Buy it now. I mean, come on. They've told you everything you need to know right there. Looks like something that Grandpa would drive around on, right? But it's a modern bike. It's just meant to look like a classic bike. And sometimes people see that and they think it's a bit silly, and they're not technically wrong. I mean, it has a classic, neat look about it. I like that. I like that you can see gaps through the engine here. You know, you've got the big flat seat. I know at some point, you know, they had to go to fuel injection, so they kind of put these little covers here. There was a time on some of them, they may still have this on a few, where it has a fake carburetor. It's actually a throttle body, but it's got like some bolted on stuff to look like it's a carburetor. It's not. The engine looked just like this when it was old, and it had an oil cooler in the front. I say it's old, this wasn't that long ago they switched this, but at some point they switched this oil cooler in the front to a radiator, but kind of still looks like the oil cooler, like it's black, the lines, you know, the way they hit it really well. Still kept the fins on the engine, but they're probably much thinner now because you have water jackets in there now. So they've managed to water cool this bike, but still keep it looking like an old school engine. I mean, yeah, you look at that, it looks like an oil cooler right there. They know that. They did that on purpose, and I like it. 64 horsepower, nothing crazy, but 59 foot-pounds, that's actually great. Yo, dude, this is a bike. I think you should buy it. It's gonna get you around, right? Now, with that, it's a 900. Here you skip up to the T120, which is, I believe, a 1200 engine. Now you bump up to 79 horsepower and 77 foot-pounds. I like when the engines have those numbers really close. It means they're usually really lively, fun engines to drive around in, to ride around in, to drive around in, drive around in. I know my words. It looks really good like that. Yeah. Oh, look, here it is. Fake carburetor. You see it? End of the day, that's going to be a good engine. It's got Brembo brakes. They'll be good. You know, it's obviously got kind of old school suspension, but it'll be just fine as a good road bike. They got the bobber version here, and I think Shade Tree hates this thing. It's like, you buy a bobber, it's something you gotta build. It's like, oh, shut up, Shade Tree, it's fine. They got into kind of a monoshock setup. They got this crazy seat here. I'm sure most people end up pulling this rear fender off so they can just spray their back with mud the whole time they're riding, because that's what you would do with something like this, right? I don't hate it. I don't think I'd buy one. Brutal. It's brutal and beautiful, bro. What's the Speedmaster? Is this just more of a, like, kind of like turning into more of a cruiser, right? Lowered it down. They got the single shock setup again. So they have a Scrambler 900 now, but I think it's only like this, right? Like there's not multiple models of it. Okay, well there is, but they don't have like the crazy thing you'll see in a second. Here, I'm gonna show you with the other one. This is a little bit taller. Got your 19 front, wire wheels. I think this is actually really good looking like that. I think that's actually one of the best ways I've seen it looking so far. Now the Scrambler 1200 is kind of interesting. It's like the same bike we just looked at, right? If you just get one of the normal ones, but you got the 1200 now, except they've got a few more versions. And if we go particularly, I'm going to look here at the XE is the one you really want to look at. It's kind of accidentally a full-on adventure bike. I know it looks like a Bonneville. It's got the Bonneville motor and the thing in it, but No, these things are badass. Matt's got one. A good old Matt, that rides with Matt, that has the FZ07. He also turned into an adventure bike. His is super accessory. He's got the factory high fender on it, and crash cages, and a bunch of other cool stuff. He's got a 2117, 250 millimeters, 9.8 inches of travel front and rear. 9.8. Fully adjustable, piggyback, reservoir, whole nine. Showing dry weight of 456. I'd assume the wet weight is close to 500. If you're looking at the Tiger 900 or 1200, you really realistically need to go look at this one as well and think about it, because Matt bought it and has used it as a full-on adventure bike. And it's awesome. Just look at the ground clearance. Look how big the kickstand is right there. That's a real bike. That's a real adventure bike. It is super ready to go. And I think it's so funny because you would look at it and go, yeah, but it's just the Bonneville Scrambler. Yeah, but just stop and pay attention for a minute, because it's actually, I mean, look at the guy right there in the thing. Yeah, real quick, I do want to show you the Speed Twin. This is just another variation. I won't go into it. I think this is also one of the better looking versions of this bike. I love the way this bike looks right here. It's just simple. It's a real simple version. You got the Speed Twin, which is just 1200 version. Good power. Got a slipper clutch in there, right? Or a wet plate torque assist clutch. Is that a slipper? What does that mean? And finally, you got the Trident RS, which is your full-on cafe racer. So I feel like most people will look at Bonneville's cafe racers, it's just the term people use for bikes like that. Oh, it's a cafe racer. But this is a cafe racer. Low bars, 17s. Look at that. Anyway, those are your Bonnevilles. Let's look at the Rocket 3 real quick, though. This is one of my favorite bikes in their lineup, but I have gotten to ride this thing. I actually got to ride the old one at 1.2, and it terrified me. It's so big and heavy. And then they made this version. They shaved crazy weight off of it somehow and made the engine bigger. But if you didn't know, this is the biggest production engine, true production engine you can get in a motorcycle. We don't want to say like the Boss Haas or something, because that's like, those are basically made to order custom bikes. 2,458 cc engine, 165 horsepower. Sure, you've ridden sport bikes with that much, but if you've ridden a bike with 163 foot-pounds, because I have, and it's insane. So it doesn't have wet weight, but it's got dry weight, 641. We assume it's getting, like, it's up there. It's getting close to 700. The inline 3, it's underneath you, like it's mounted, front to back. So when you rev it, this thing, I think it torques this way. And then it's also shaft drive. So when you pin the throttle, you get a little bit of that twisting action, as well as what they call like shaft jacking, where the rear comes up a little bit. So it's just this lively animal underneath you. This bike is rideable though. Like, it didn't feel that insane to me to ride it. 240 rear tire, a 16, and a 150 front. Yeah, and maybe that's part of it, just the big tires. The suspension's really well set up. Look at this rear brake here. You have a 300 millimeter rear brake on this thing. It was huge. 4-piston caliper in the rear. It was so impressive. It was crazy. And that was the big takeaway I took from it. I was like, this engine is, it's an insane engine. It's crazy power, but it was rideable. It was manageable in that setup, and I really, really dug this bike. I remember I rode up a handful of bikes with Triumph, and I came home, and my wife was like, well, which one was your favorite? I was like, oh, of course, the most expensive one I rode, the Rocket 3. It was like $25,000. Absolutely ridiculous, though. Like, what's the practicalness of this bike? I don't know. I mean, is it a touring bike? It doesn't really have like the big fairing for it. A great place for luggage. Is it a round town bike? Well, it's kind of insane for that too. It doesn't have to make sense, and they just, who cares if it does? It's absurd, and that's okay. It's just a silly motorcycle, and I really, really want one. I think it's a cool brand. I like what they're up to. It's gonna be really neat to see them expand the dirt bike in the world. Hopefully they'll actually have some toned down versions that come to the street. That's what I'd be super interested in. Hopefully they make like an actual hardcore adventure bike with that 660 motor. I think it's a silly not to. You always want to see these old brands like this that, continue around and they stay modern. They've done a great job with that. Triumph, Harley Davidson, for instance, wasn't that way in my opinion for a long time. Is now kind of catching up. They're trying to come out with all this stuff. But Triumph has always kind of had both ends of it. They got their Bonnevilles doing the old school thing, and the Thruxton and these other versions. And then they've had their Tigers and their Street Triples and Speed Triples. I don't know where the Daytonas are right now. Hopefully those will come back. Yeah, otherwise though, thanks for watching the video. If you want to see the next video and the video after that, go jump over on Patreon, because there are always a few videos ahead. If you are on Patreon, jump over in the Discord and say what's up to me in there. I always like hanging out with you guys in the Discord. We've got some cool meat stuff coming up, so get in there. You need to get in there and chat with us. Otherwise, let me know what bike you want to see me do next in this series. Pretty much where these always come from is what you guys suggest to me. We'll see you next time.